Hello there, and welcome. Today we're going to pull apart something you've probably never given a second thought to, the humble umbrella. It seems so simple, right? But believe me, hiding inside this everyday object is an incredible story about status, weather, and the absolutely wonderful chaos of language.
Right, let's get straight into it. Have you ever actually stopped and thought about why the words for umbrella across Europe are so wildly different? I mean, here we might call it a brolly, but the French have parapluie, which literally means stop rain. How on earth did one simple object get so many completely unrelated names? Well, it all comes down to a fascinating battle between history and sheer practicality.
So, where does our story begin? Well, believe it or not, it doesn't start with rain. It starts with the sun. The very first family of umbrella words had absolutely nothing to do with staying dry. It was all about showing off your status and finding a little bit of personal shade.
And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. The oldest European name for the umbrella comes straight from the Latin word umbra, which just means shade or shadow. And that one word tells you everything you need to know about what it was for. This wasn't for downpours. It was a parasol, a fancy tool for the rich and powerful to keep the sun off.
You can see the word itself went on this amazing journey. It starts in Latin as umbrella, which is quite a lovely image, isn't it? A little shadow. Then the object pretty much vanishes from Europe for centuries before popping back up in 16th century Italy as the ombrello. It was a total must-have fashion accessory for dukes and cardinals, and from there, in 1611, we English just nabbed a word wholesale. And so, the umbrella was born.
And here's the proof in the pudding. When the English traveler Thomas Coriat first wrote about the umbrella, this is how he described it: for protection from the sun. He saw exactly how the Italians were using it. So you see, we didn't just borrow the object, we borrowed the word and that whole vibe of Mediterranean prestige that came with it. But here's the thing. That whole sunny Italian prestige thing doesn't really work in the drizzly reality of Northern Europe, does it? So now we get to see how a bit of good old-fashioned French pragmatism came along and completely changed the game and the name for most of the continent.
What the French did was just brilliantly simple. It was so logical. They already had the word parasol. Para means to stop, and sol means sun. A sun stopper. Makes perfect sense. So they just looked at it and thought, hang on, what if we just swap out the sun part? They took pluie, their word for rain, and boom, the parapluie, the rain stopper, was born. A brand new word for what this thing actually did in their climate.
And this new, functional name was a massive hit. It spread like wildfire. The Spanish tweaked it to make paraguas, stop waters. The Dutch and Swedes basically took the French word as is. But now, have a look at the Polish one. In this wonderfully strange twist, they took the word parasol, the sun stopper, but they use it for a rain umbrella. It's a fantastic example of a word just completely breaking free from its original meaning.
Okay, so not everyone was keen on jumping on the Italian or French bandwagon. There's a whole third group of languages that basically said, no thanks, we'll make our own word. They looked inwards and forged their own path.
And the absolute classic example here is German. They just took their word for rain, Regen, and their word for a screen, Schirm, and just slammed them together. Regenschirm, a rain screen. It's perfectly logical, totally transparent, and 100% homegrown. It does exactly what it says on the tin.
And what's really fascinating is that this logic wasn't just a Germanic thing. Look at Hungarian, which comes from a completely different language family. They did the exact same thing. Esho for rain, ernyő for screen. Put them together, esernyő. It's a perfect case of different languages arriving at the same solution independently.
And you see the same pattern again over in the Baltic languages. The Latvian word lietussargs is just so wonderfully clear. It's lietus, rain, plus sargs, guard, a rain guard. It just goes to show you how different cultures, all working on their own, can come up with the same perfectly logical name for a new gadget. Right, we've had prestige and we've had logic. But the Russian story, well, the Russian story is something else entirely. It's not about being fancy. It's not about being practical. It's a story of a word that was born from a complete, but kind of brilliant, misunderstanding. Okay, so check this out. It all started when Russian sailors heard the Dutch naval term Zonnedeck, a sun cover on a ship, and borrowed it as Zontic. Now, in Russian, the ending ik is super common and it just means little. So everyone heard Zontic and thought,
A little zont. The only problem was there was no such word as zont. So what did they do? They invented it. They worked backwards, chopped off the little ending they thought they heard, and created the brand new word, zont. It's a word invented entirely by mistake. Just amazing.
So after that whirlwind tour, what does this all actually tell us? Well, once you trace all these different paths, a really clear picture starts to form about how culture, climate, and language all crash into each other. Let's try and bring it all together.
You can really boil it down to these three main strategies. First, you've got the Shadow Clan, let's call them, led by Italian, where the name was all about borrowing a bit of foreign glamour. Then you have the Rainstoppers, the pragmatic French-led group who cared about what the thing actually did. And finally, you've got the Rain Shields, the DIY crowd who built their own words from scratch. Three completely different ways of thinking, all for the same object.
So when you get right down to it, the story is this. The umbrella's name started its life in Europe as a sunny, southern symbol of luxury. But as it traveled north, it ran headfirst into the reality of miserable weather, and it was reshaped by the simple, practical need to stay dry. It's a perfect little history of fashion versus function told through a single word.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. We've just unwrapped a whole complex history of trade, status, and climate that was hiding inside a simple umbrella. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secret histories are sitting right there on your desk or in your kitchen, just waiting to be discovered?